While most of the world has spent the last 9 months hunkered down at home, tens of thousands of Australians have been stranded at other countries overseas. Their government has a strict re-entry rules, which means many people are still waiting for their flight home. One couple in travel limbo is David and Kate Jeffries. They are joining us this morning from Portage la Prairie, Manitoba. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. How are you?
I'm doing well, but I'm curious to know how you guys are holding up. David, you left Perth back in February with your baby, with Mitchell, to visit your mom in Portage. She'd been diagnosed with cancer, and the plan was you were going to stay for a month, but you've now been stranded there for 9 months. Walk us through what happened.
Yeah, certainly. We had return flights that were booked for March 29th. Now, the Australian government advised on the 17th that, if possible, Australians should consider coming home, which was fine for us because we had return tickets booked. But 3 days later, as you'll be well aware, the border between Canada and the US got shut down. Flights started getting cancelled. The routes that we were relying on to get home got suspended. And our flights got cancelled, and we've been bumped off every flight that we have tried to get on since then, 9 months later.
Kate, you are an Australian citizen, as is your son Mitchell. And David, you are a permanent resident of Australia. Some people are wondering about the citizenship and if that played into it. But Kate, we know the Canadian government, like a lot of other countries, had massive repatriation efforts in the days and weeks after the lockdown was announced in March. Why was it different for Australian citizens?
As far as we understand it, Australia is the only country worldwide that's been unwilling and unable to repatriate its citizens. I think we understood initially the lockdown because there was a lot of unknowns about the virus, but 9 months later we're still stuck here. Our governments refused to apply any of the learnings worldwide or any of their own recommendations to come up with a plan to get us home, unfortunately.
What's your best sense as to why that's happening? There's a lot of frustration online from these thousands of Australians who have not been able to get home despite their best efforts.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest difference here is where the responsibility has landed. Scott Morrison, our Prime Minister, when this pandemic hit, he abdicated the entirety of responsibility for borders and quarantine to the states. So basically what he was doing, to put it in a Canadian analogy, is he was saying to Manitoba or Alberta, it's your responsibility to get your citizens home. Now, states and provinces, they look primarily internally, and there was, and as such, there was no federal oversight in returning stranded Australians as there were to get Canadians home, for example. What that has also meant is that the foreign embassies, with no federal policy on returning Australians, have had very, very little tools at their available to them, which means that there are reports and, in fact, Senate committee testimony that our embassies are telling other fellow stranded Aussies to go to homeless shelters, giving out addresses for homeless shelters, or go start a GoFundMe to try and sponsor their efforts to get home.
Kate,
I think, unfortunately, Australia seems to be doing a bit of a victory lap because they've got quite low numbers, which is fantastic. But unfortunately, there is still 40,000 of us stuck overseas who can't return to our country. And our government is also actively pursuing plans to bring in unskilled labour and international students, entire cricket teams and things of that nature before Australians.
This story, unfortunately, does not get any easier for the both of you. We are going to have to say goodbye in just a moment. Kate, though, I understand that you and your son are heading back to Australia December the 18th. At least that's the plan. Hopefully the flights don't get cancelled. Otherwise, you're going to lose your job in February if you don't get back home. But now your family is split up.
We're actually all hoping to return together on December 18th. So we're hoping that flight goes ahead. We really want to get back to our home, to my job, to medical cover, to our friends and family. We have every right to be in Australia, and we'd like to go home.
We are hoping the best for all of you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Safe journeys. All right, here's Lynn.